Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be in the world. Welcome to the Sensitive Stability BPD Live Show. I'm your host, Kevin Reynolds. For those of you who don't know me, I am a BPD survivor and a BPD coach. I've been in remission for quite some time, and I'll tell you, it's a hell of a lot better. It's a hell of a lot better than experiencing life the way that I did. For most of my life. That said, it is possible for anyone to achieve remission. It doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter your circumstances, doesn't matter. Good morning, Jill. How tough things have been, or what you have suffered from in the past, or how deep the traumas are, or what the symptoms might be, or how bad the episodes are, or how many people you've blocked in the past, or how often you've been abandoned. Every single one of us can get to remission with the right set of eyes and the right discipline. And sometimes it does take discipline. Discipline doesn't mean punishment in this scenario. Discipline means adherence to the activities and behaviors of which are most likely to get you closest to your goal, closest to the outcome that you want. Today's topic is changing perspectives. Perspective changes. One of the core essential constituents of getting to remission. I had no idea the amount of perspective change that was necessary to live the kind of life that I wanted to live. And I think that it's one of the reasons a lot of programs out there fail, a lot of therapy models, and a lot of the attempts that we make before remission to get better. I think one of the reasons that these things don't work is because they focus very heavily. Thank you, Jill. Good morning to everybody here. We do these programs that target skills. You need to learn the skills. Thank you. I like the coral one. It's pretty great. And the skills are good for in the moment, but they don't ultimately change your perspective on the triggers. You learning how to mitigate the emotion that you have when you feel disrespected, for example, is not going to stop you from feeling disrespected in the future, but a perspective change will. And that's one of the complaints I have about the existing programs before I started mine. I felt they were teaching me a lot of skills, but as you all might be aware, it's very difficult sometimes to remember even the skill in the moment. Sometimes it's very difficult to continue to practice them. You start to get a little better, right? And then you sort of stop practicing the skills. Things have been going good, so, maybe enjoy that. And you fall right back down the chute, just like the old game Chutes and Ladders. You make your way all the way up to the top, and then you hit one of those chutes, and you slide all the way back down to the bottom of the map. You have to start all over again. So it seems, anyway. That would be when we focus too heavily on the development of skills, not heavily enough on the development of perspective changes, of which would properly, permanently put the triggers to rest. And it is possible to do, and it is possible to do in a way where you can live a good life and have most of what you want. That's the part I never understood before remission. I was so hung up on what I might lose out on or what might change that I don't like, and all the fears and scary things surrounding having to accept certain alternate realities that I wasn't comfortable with, that I overlooked most of the perspective changes for most of my life until I was really serious about wanting this to go away. And instead I would focus consistently or constantly, it's a better word, on what skills I could use. And there are skills to mitigate the emotions. That's part of it. You have to understand how to dismantle some of the emotional tank. You do have to understand that kind of stuff. You do have to understand the warning signs and when you should be paying closer attention to your behavior. You got to understand all that stuff, and a lot of those things come from the skills. But after you have the skills down pat and you're doing things better, you realize you can't take out your stress on someone else. Doesn't help to give the pain to someone else. No matter how much you want them to understand you, they'll never understand you. And even if they get close to it by feeling some of the pain and you properly explain it to them, you're not going to feel any better ultimately. You're not going to feel any better because the pain will continually regenerate for you, which tells you that there's something else missing, and that's something else that's missing so that you can be permanently happy with whatever this trigger may be. If it's the disrespect or feeling unheard or ignored or unimportant or not good enough, comparing yourself to other people, getting stuck in the past, thinking too much about that, right? Thinking too much about futures that haven't happened yet. All the anxieties in life that you could start to classify into different buckets, and you start learning these are all in this bucket, these ones are all in this bucket. All these different things can be eliminated with the right change in perspective. A lot of times, the perspective change comes at a little bit of uncomfortable work because there's some hurdles in our way. We don't want to think that we're at fault because we have such a fragile sense of self that honestly, frankly, we can't take that kind of heat most of the time. So the first initial coping mechanism is usually passing the blame to something or someone else in the world. But that's ultimately unproductive because no matter how much this person might really be at fault, let's say they really are, they still can't fill that cannonball-sized hole in your chest. Thank you, Nicole. Appreciate you. That hole's going to stay there no matter how much your partner tells you that they love you, no matter how many times you seek the validation, no matter how many times you paint the picture that you're the victim, okay? And I know we hate that word. That's one of the hurdles we have to get over. We have to get over that victimhood kind of mentality. Not easy to do because it's one of the only ways we've learned to get the affection that we so desperately desire in our lives. You learn that when you're a very little kid. You know, you learn that when you can paint the picture that something has happened to you, which is unfair or wrong, whatever it may be, that other people will comfort you. And because you didn't get the validation and comfort oftentimes, or learn how to do that yourself when you were young, that carries over into adulthood. And we simply find masterful, very intelligent ways to lace that type of sympathy seeking into our lives without people even realizing most of the time it's happening, including you. It's not a conscious decision most of the time. It's subconscious, right? It's just a survival tactic that developed in the background. Not that big of a deal. No sense in feeling shame over something you had no control over and materialized naturally on its own. That would be silly, you know? Better to focus on the solution because we don't want to feel like the victim and we don't want to be the victim and we don't want other people to look at us like the victim, and that's kind of how they start looking at us, you know? They start looking at us like we complain a lot. Thank you, Jill. I appreciate you. The gifts that you guys send throughout the lives go into our advertising budget, of which help promote other live feeds that we do in the future. They help get more people like you who might need to hear some of the stuff that we talk about. You never know. People are in all types of places in their life, and that's tough because everybody requires different types of perspective changes. That's another reason that a lot of the programs which exist in the world don't tend to work very well. It's because they overlook the need for customization in the process of trying to help someone. So when you're trying to figure out what perspective changes you might need, the best place to start is where you're complaining the most. So I can tell fairly quickly where somebody's hot spots are. You know what I mean? I can tell pretty quickly where they are just from talking to them a little bit in email usually, which if you don't know what to do and you need some personalized guidance, and I do respond to all my emails personally, please do reach out. There's a button in my profile if you're here in the live show on TikTok. We go live on TikTok Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. US EST, talking about a different topic related to BPD each day. If you found us on YouTube where the replays are posted, then just Google us, you know, Kevin, BPD, sensitive stability, any of that kind of stuff, you'll find me. Tell me a little bit about your story, what you're going through, and I'll be able to figure out what the next best step is for you fairly quickly. But you will reveal what the biggest problems are in your life pretty fast if anybody's willing to listen to you at all in general. It doesn't matter who it is, a friend, anyone. You're going to instantaneously start talking about what is bothering you the most. And good morning to you. I see you in there, Katie. and good morning to everybody who is regularly showing up here. Okay, something weird happened on my screen. You know, I'm not very great with the social media side of things, to be honest with you. I have no idea what's going on half the time. Random things popping up on my screen all the time telling me stuff. I have no idea what it means. It doesn't really matter. I just like to talk about the important stuff. But you also know your own hot spots if you're honest with yourself. If you sit down yourself, right? If you sit down yourself and you say, I need to know what's wrong. I need to know what I need to fix in my life. You're going to instantaneously come up with an answer. It's not going to probably be one that you like. That's the caveat. And that's oftentimes why we don't do this work, because let's face it, we're all very intelligent people. We're all very smart people. And another reason the programs that existed when I was trying to get better didn't work for me is because they only seem to want to ask me what's wrong. And the skills that they give me are trite and basic and surface level and never work to actually fix the solution or fix the problem. You know what I mean? They just didn't work. Putting an ice cube to my head didn't work. Tapping my leg didn't work. Reading the definition of mindful 50,000 times didn't help me. Meditating did not help me. You know, leaving the room when I'm angry didn't help. Like going for a run didn't help. These things don't help. You have to have a structured plan to make any of that kind of stuff work. Some of it might be semi-useful under the right circumstances or whatnot. But, you know, like it's taking space and time could be useful if you understand what space and time means and what to do in the space and time. When a therapist would tell me that, I would just, I would try it the first couple times. I'd separate whenever I was angry, and then I still felt unheard, and I was still pissed off, and I'd be taking a walk around the block pissed off, and I'd come back pissed off, and then I'd talk to my partner, and I was still just as angry, and there was no progress, and I'm thinking, this doesn't work. But I didn't do any of the work when I was walking around the block. You know what I mean? I didn't do any of the work to try and fix the actual issues. Instead, I just dwelled on the victimhood of me having been wronged. And then the next hurdle after you finally realize that, look, it's time to stop blaming the outside world, of which mostly we have no control over. And we deep down know that it's not really their fault. That's why we have patterns of losing people and not them. You know what I mean? Like, we want to say, oh, it was this person, it was that person, oh, it was this boss, it was that job, it was this whatever. But we're the ones who are going from job to job, having trouble with that. We're the ones who have unstable relationships, and that's even a symptom. We're the ones who typically have all this tremendous self-loathing, this hatred that we have towards ourselves. But this brings us to the next hurdle, which is then you'll start saying, well, I'm the problem. That's the next problem. Because you're not the problem. It's simply the negative coping mechanisms that you had no choice in getting when you were very young. It was just a subconscious decision in your mind to build defense mechanisms to try and keep you safe. And you see how I phrase it like that? That's because that's the truth. That is the truth. You did not choose to become manipulative, to try to protect yourself. You did not choose to become distrusting of other people to where you have trust issues. And there's no shame in admitting that part either. You know, so get over it's not that I don't trust you, babe. It's that I don't trust other people. You just don't trust people. And it's because why the hell would you? Bad stuff did happen. And now I want to protect myself. There's no shame in having defense mechanisms. But once you recognize they're there and you recognize the damage they're causing and you understand that there might be other ways to get what you want, of which hurt no one, including yourself, that's a better train to be on, right? But you have to get over the fact that this is also not your fault either, because we'll waste a lot of time. Some people I wasted years blaming myself, and I see it happen a lot. I see people waste years, sometimes their whole life, feeling like they're the ones at fault. That's unproductive. Oh my God. Anyway, so duck on my head. Maybe it was a goose. I don't know. Anyway, that one's great. I think that too is a defense mechanism, because then it keeping us in that victim mentality. Oh, it's me, I'm just such the villain, it's always my fault, I'm such a bad person, I'm a loser, and I'm always gonna be a loser, and there's no chance at me ever getting out of this. That kind of mentality will keep you trapped for as long as you have the mentality. For as long as you experience it, that will be the next thing that keeps you stuck. And we need to find ways out of being stuck. That is the nature of getting better. Getting better means change. Change can be many different things, and it doesn't have to be the same for everybody, which is another reason I hated a lot of the cookie cutter programs I was trying to get out of this. It's because all of the skills and all of the ideas that they had were these universal ideas. But as you probably are aware, one of the reasons we feel so misunderstood is due to the uniqueness of how this manifests. I mean, you already feel unique compared to the rest of the world. That's why you feel alone. And you've been looking at it from the wrong perspective your entire life, by the way. I would say, why me? I'm the black sheep. This is so miserable. I'm so glad I'm the black sheep. I'm so glad I'm different from everyone else. I'm so glad that I have the skills I have. And I don't know why I was so angry that nobody else had them. And I do know why. It's the perspective. I thought, well, I could give all this, and I could devote, and I could be the loyal person, and I could commit this much, and I can, understand you and be there for you all the time. How come you can't do that for me? Because they can't. That's it. They can't. They can't do it. You're like two different models of cars, man. I mean, you look at the road, there's like 5,000 different types of cars out there. You see one of them, Tesla space trucks or whatever the hell they call them. That looks totally different than a Honda Accord. Totally different. But they didn't just pop into the universe that way, right? They start out with a frame. What's that frame look like? Well, for the space truck, it looks this way. For the Accord, it looks another way. For you and me having BPD, our frame looks very different than every other person's frame. And you might be in the cyber vehicle, of which is super powerful and capable, right? Thank you, Pasha. Appreciate you. And if you had the Aquarius magic vehicle that could go underwater and fly and, go thousands of miles without recharging, and super strong, can push and pull anything, and super capable, of which we are, why the hell are you complaining because everybody else can't do it? Why? Does that make any sense at all? I mean, does it? You're so angry that your partner can't show you the love that you think you deserve to feel from them. Strangely, we feel we deserve no love before remission, But they are not built on your frame. The rest of the world is not built on your frame. And that's just it. So there's no sense in being upset about it. And if you have any questions or comments, please do tag Amit. You'll see him in the chat here. He's our moderator, a good friend of mine. His tag is Sensitive Stability Coach. Just give him a shout and we'll try to get to your questions. And Amit, you can go ahead and pin as you so please at this time. Usually we try to get around the first 15 to 20 minutes where we focus on whatever the topic is that morning before we start hitting questions, because I'd like to have some consistent value. Thanks, Jill. That's the first time I heard a sound with any of those. Maybe it's, I don't know. Maybe I got my volume too low. But anyway, I'd like you to be able to be heard and seen. And for those of you who somehow the comment just doesn't get pinned and doesn't get addressed, there are a lot of them sometimes. It can be hard to keep up. I do want to hear it, and I do want to help, so thanks, Jill. Please do shoot me an email. As mentioned earlier, there's a button in my profile to make it easy. I don't think that anybody should have to suffer with this ever. I mean, I really wish we could eliminate it, the suffering part. I don't want to eliminate the BPD part entirely. They're just calling it BPD. Really, it's a majestic condition. It's a real big blessing to have this condition. We only call it a condition in the negative light because of the negative coping mechanisms that were attached to it. You know what I mean? But if you're mining gold, you're going to have to get a little dirty, and you're going to have to get rid of some of the rough, undesirable stone around it. It's just how it is. Doesn't make the gold any less valuable. How do you leave the love of our life and not feel guilty? How do you leave the love of our life and not feel guilty? Well, there's a lot of scenarios where that might be taking place. You could be the partner of somebody with BPD. You could be somebody who has BPD. And either way, I could see you coming up with a solution of, I need to leave this person, and I don't want to leave them because I feel guilty. For that reason, I'm going to think that you might be more on the partner side of it. And the guilt, I think you need to break down the guilt and figure out exactly why you feel guilty, where it's coming from. That kind of thing I think is important. And realizing this is part of the reason partners feel guilty leaving us, okay? It's because they know that we didn't choose this condition. That's the reason. They know. It's kind of like leaving somebody because they have cancer, almost, in a way. You know what I mean? But the truth is, you have to always put your own oxygen mask on first. You have to have self-respect. You cannot be doing things in life that sacrifice dignity. And you are not responsible for other people's happiness. You can make them smile. You can make them laugh. You can make them feel good. You can have good memories with them. But you cannot make somebody happy. You can't. You just can't do it. You can share happiness, what you have, but you can't force somebody to be happy. You can't force somebody to evolve. You can't force somebody to admit truth or gain awareness. You can guide them. But I would say that the entire rest of your life is not worth the risk if there's no signs of improvement. That's just how it is. No matter how much you love them. Two things can be true at the same time. Something can be unhealthy and you can also be in love, for example. And that doesn't mean it's hopeless. I think there's hope in every situation. So if you don't know what to do, shoot me an email, tell me some of the story, and I'll guide you best I can, okay? Kate says, good morning. My daughter has BPD. What can I do to help her, please? Well, to start, Kate, coffee. You know, I was in that hot air balloon, actually. That exact one. That's a picture of me in it, in fact. Anyway, so kid with BPD, you're the parent. I'll start by saying there is an entire section on my TikTok. If you go to my profile, right underneath the email button, there are some tabs. I think the first one says comorbidities, BPD comorbidities. But there's a lot of different topics there. Some are relationships, episodes, splitting. There's one for parents where I have tagged all of the videos I've ever shot over the years talking to parents and about kids and whatnot with BPD. So I'd say that's a good place to start, just to get some information when you need it. Secondly, I would say that there's a lot of variables that we don't know and that matter here. How old is the kid? When did they first start getting it? What are they displaying? What parent might have it, if any? If there's an older sibling or siblings at all? If they've seen a therapist, if they're diagnosed, which is rare for a kid, but sometimes it does happen. If they're on any medications for anything else, what other things they might have. All these kinds of things matter. How close you are to them. What parents might be missing from the scenario, were they adopted or not? You know, all these things add up to create a very specific set of scenarios. So I'd say a good step would be emailing me those scenarios and get on the train of getting better, you know? Perfect. But really, though, I'll help guide you, and I do work with parents as well, and I work with children. As long as they are 8 or older, I will consider it. Generally, I put more scrutiny on that consideration process when they're under 12. You know, it is possible. I just kind of have to get a feel for the situation. Now, I have great success with kids who are displaying these types of symptoms. It's very easy for me to go back in time and relate to what was happening back then. I have an excellent memory in terms of all of the terrible things that I've experienced and done in my lifetime. It so happens that was how I spent most of my time before remission. It was complaining about the past, you know what I mean? So that works out great. Plus, I'm kind of like a big kid. I mean, I might be very put together and responsible and mature and understand this fully, but I'm also a big kid inside, so I can relate to that. And I think that there needs to be a bridge between you two. That's something that'll help a great deal. So reach out, tell me your story, let me know what's going on. And the perspective changes, by the way, that are required to get out of this. There are perspective changes for the parents, for the friends, and for the loved ones, for the partners, of people as well, of which when you adopt can make the situation dramatically better. So there's some stuff that I'll be able to tell you, if you're a parent or a partner of somebody with BPD, that will infinitely improve things and pretty instantaneously help just from understanding some of the concepts a little better. So don't give up. Keep educating, keep reading, keep researching. It'll get better. Alex says, how can I stop putting people on a pedestal and why do I do it? Well, you do it because you think that if this person who you have chosen to admire and respect, if they return the love, that you will finally be good enough. So the crux of the problem is not being able to validate yourself, to feel good enough yourself, to like yourself, to know who you are, to have value, purpose, and self-esteem, and self-confidence, and self-respect, and dignity. Without those things, you will seek it from other people, and love is measured incorrectly in order to obtain it. We think that if I give so much, good morning, AJ, good to see you. If I could just get this person to love me, I'll be good enough. And they deserve all this stuff. They deserve it all. The reason that you want to stop it is because it's uncomfortable for them a lot of the times. It is uncomfortable for you a lot of the times, and that'll be for several reasons, the biggest of which is the resentment that builds as you see the rest of the world not care for you as you have cared for them. But you have to be able to put yourself on a pedestal. You actually have to get to a place where you like yourself enough to treat yourself like somebody that you actually care about. Yeah, that's not easy to get to. It requires micro actions throughout time, changes that start out very small, that contribute to you becoming somebody of value. Could be as simple as starting to just make your bed every morning. You do it for 21 days, you form the habit of making a bed, you do it for 6 months, you now have a behavioral trait of staying neat in the morning, and that first win kind of rolls over into other wins. You do it long enough, it's a personality trait. You're now someone who makes their bed. It's basically that simple. And the more that you treat yourself right, the less that you'll worry so much about pleasing other people. Because getting accepted by the people that we think matter tends to matter more than accepting ourselves. Hubble says, my BPD partner is often in an angry, nihilistic mood. How can I gently help him stop these spirals? Okay, well, you got it right. How you phrased it, I love how you phrased it. You said, how can I gently help him? Because you have recognized that you can't actually fix it yourself. That is true. You can't fix that yourself. They have to legitimately have something to live for, something that they want, that's valuable, that they see worth fighting for, and that can't be you, and it can't be another person. And I know this because I would live for my partners. I would live for them, and that was not enough to make the changes. So to answer your question, we would still need to know more about where he is in the process. Does he admit BPD? Has he got diagnosed? Has he seen anybody for any of it at all? Whether it was effective or not, how did he feel about it? Did he like going to therapy? Does he think it's worth it? Does he believe in any of this stuff? Is he in denial? How long you been together? How old are you? When did it first start in his life? What's gotten him into a nihilistic state is the perpetual failure that we experience, a failure that we curate without even realizing it. So understanding all of this part of the journey will help me give you some better information. As I've said a couple times today, we're getting a lot of questions that require a lot of circumstantial information that I don't have, which is great because it means that we're hitting the nail on the head here and people are wanting to get better and improve their lives. But please do send me an email and tell me the story, because I'd like to be able to actually address more of the specifics of the scenario so that you have some useful information to go off of. Melvin says, do people who are unaware that they have BPD blame their spouse for unhappiness and contributing to fleeing? Well, it's the first defense mechanism is always going to be, it's not me. I didn't do it. It's not my fault. And that's because we literally can't take it, you know? There were periods in my life when things were so bad, if I would have had to admit all the wrongdoing I was doing, right? All the bad stuff that I had perpetrated, everywhere that I was wrong or at fault, I wouldn't have made it. I mean, I wouldn't have made it, because it would have been everything. It would have been everything. Now, I'm not saying we're at fault for everything, because that's the mentality that we have, where we have to be at fault for it. We are accountable. We are accountable for making the changes, or for recognizing them, and we're responsible for making the changes. That's on the productive side. But to get to that place where we are exhibiting productive behavior like that, takes the perspective changes that I'm talking about here. The ones where you start understanding that blame has really no useful quality in this formula. You're looking at a math equation here, and you want what's on the other side of the equal sign, right? And you want it to be awesome. And you're looking at awesome. Instead, you're just getting terrible, because you're not really looking at the variables, you know? And some of those variables are in your control, and some of them point blank out of your control, and then some have little coefficients on them, of which are your influence. Your partner might be one of those variables. Can't control them, but you might be able to influence them a little bit. And that's kind of the direction you need to go in terms of getting out of stuff like this, is, well, what can I actually put my two hands on and modify? Zanny. I'm going to go with Zanny. Hopefully that's right. My partner has BPD and has stopped his meds and believes no psychologist. Damn, we just missed that one. I almost had it. All right, I got it. You don't have to repeat the first part. And believes no psychologist can help him. If I bring up a concern, he takes it as a personal attack on his character. Well, we often do think that no one can help us, and that's because we spend a lifetime of experiencing no one understanding us. No one understanding what we're going through. So why would we think someone else could help? And if we've tried to get help before, we've quickly found that they don't get it, and they don't seem to care. They do care, but they don't care in the way that we need them to care. And they can't touch base on the stuff that we need them to understand because they haven't experienced it. So that's part of the issue here. That's why I don't do therapy. That's why I didn't go that route. I mean, I do therapy. Like, if I want a therapist, sounding board, all that cathartic release of energy, I'll go do it myself. When I say I don't do therapy, I mean I'm not a therapist. I didn't go counseling with this. Could have, but I had nothing but complaints about that. So I went the coaching route. Makes me not a mandated reporter. People could tell me anything at all. There's no consequence for it. I share stories along the way. It's a very personal type of camaraderie that happens, which is what helps people get out so much quicker with my program. But the program aside, I would say that's a phase, and I hate to say this part to you. There are things you can do. Before I say that, I'll say there are things you can do after I learn more about it. I'll be able to tell you a little bit more, and I'll guide you whatever way I can. So reach out to me and tell me what's going on. But beyond what you can do, usually in life, I hate this part. It's true, though. Usually in life, people will not change unless there's tragedy. That's how it is. So if you do nothing about it, and he does nothing about it, nothing will be done about it until there's some tragic moment where you're like ready to leave, basically, right? And then maybe he'll be motivated to do something all of a sudden magically. But there are things you could do to kind of push him in the right direction and maybe sidestep that type of fate and get him help earlier. So please do tell me what's going on, and I'll point you in the right direction there. Lisa says, with the rapid cycling of BPD, how do we trust emotions? Do they really love their parents? BPD people do really love, yes, and we we love very strongly. The love is very real for sure, but I would say that we don't understand it, and what we think is love before remission usually isn't. We are measuring love incorrectly. It doesn't mean we don't feel it. We feel it, we have it, it's real, but we measure it wrong. We think that love equates to the amount of things that we do or sacrifice for someone. For example, it's one of the reasons we get so pissed off and end up saying, you don't love me, you don't even care. And you're thinking, what? I do everything for you, as a parent or a partner. But we don't see it that way. We're confused because we don't understand how to measure the love. That's something that has to be taught to us, of which I am very keen on touching base on with anybody I work with, because you have to understand that concept, or you can have all the skills in the world and you'll still fail. You'll still end up in the same position. So with that said, the kids, they do love, and I know it's tough, but anybody can get out, and including the kids. They can get out too, and it starts with the examples that are being set, for sure. It's an environmentally activated condition to some extent. There's something that activated it. So if I were a parent of a kid with BPD and they weren't better, I would be hyper-focused on what examples I was setting. I would be hyper-focused on how I'm teaching them to validate themselves. Am I giving them validation when it's not deserved or earned? Or am I teaching them how to nurture themselves and grow in uncomfortable struggles? And those are the kinds of thoughts that I would say are important in the position you're in right now, but you don't have to be alone in that. So shoot me a DM or an email. Let me know what's up, and I will give you some better guidance after I learn some more details. As I said to the person earlier who was talking about their kid with BPD, the ages matter, when it first started matter. All these factors matter and change the advice I might give you. So please don't stay silent. You don't have to be alone in that. Riki says, good to see you. How do we overcome the extreme shame and embarrassment of the things we've done? Great question. You've probably all, if you've been here before, you've heard me say that guilt, blame, shame, and embarrassment really have no place here anymore. I mean, if you commit a crime, serve the sentence, and then when the jailer opens the door, step on out. Don't stay in there and say, oh, no, I deserve it. It's all good. You can keep me in here. This is where I belong. I'm such a failure and such a loser. I'm right where I need to be. I mean, you need to be able to step out after you do the time, so to speak, and this goes for everything. That also kind of limits the apology phase a little bit, doesn't it? Because apologizing for 2 days straight, that's not going to actually fix anything. You telling them how sorry you are doesn't change what you did, and it doesn't make their recovery part faster. So the guilt, blame, shame, and embarrassment, it has to do with the fact that other people are involved most of the time. Yeah, how they look at us is what we're afraid of. It's one of the reasons why we don't pursue our dreams sometimes, because we're afraid of what other people think if we fail. You know what I mean? We're actually worried about that. The shame and the embarrassment that you feel tells you that you haven't made peace with something, and to make peace with it, you have to understand the full chessboard, everything that's going on, which means spending time diving into your intentions, why you did what you did or said what you said. Spend some time diving into other people's intentions who were involved. Why did they say or do the things that they did? What did they want? What did they mean? Because intention matters, you know? The analogy that I like the most for that one is you have two married women, yeah, and they have a husband, and both of them go to jail because they had unalived their partners, right? One of them is released the next, let's say a day later, totally innocent, released, off the hook, even though she did what she did. The other one is sentenced to the worst possible outcome, right? What's the difference between the two scenarios? Because they both did the same thing, right? Well, one of them might have been in a bad spot where the guy was attacking her, and it was a self-defense moment. She just happened to survive in self-defense. Well, obviously, she's going to get let go, right? The other one, She could have left at any time. She had options. Instead, she chose to wait till her husband went to sleep. And then there was this premeditated situation. Well, there's a big difference between those two women in scenarios. The intentions matter. And your intention throughout life, when you've made mistakes, probably wasn't to hurt other people on purpose. That's probably not what the intention was. You're more on the other side of things, right? You have to be able to read the past like it's someone else's story, stripping it of active emotional content. You can't let the amygdala take control and start replicating all those chemicals, making you feel the same exact way you felt before. And you know what's happening when you bring the past scenario into the present. The proper way to look at it would be, we had a fight, I did this, she did that, I said this, she said that, it made me feel bad, then I said this stuff, and that was the insulting phase, I shouldn't have said that stuff, I feel bad about that. See how I just carried it into the present? And now if you keep going with it, instead of saying, I felt bad about it and the outcome wasn't good and leaving it there and extracting the lesson, we'll start saying, and I always feel bad because I'm such an asshole. I do this all the time. I'm such a loser. I'll always fail at this, and I deserve what I'm getting. That's bringing the past into the present. That's where the shame and the embarrassment start to come into play a little heavier, right? The guilt and how you think other people feeling about you. Can't let that control how you feel about yourself. Pasha says, any recommended reading material or workbooks for the quiet borderline? Well, quiet borderlines are internalizing a lot of the pain, a lot of the problems they have, so it's not outwardly expressed. I think that the best book for you at the moment would probably be the I Hate You, Don't Leave Me book. I think it's on Amazon. Just look it up. I Hate You, Don't Leave Me. Check that one out. I'm currently writing a book. I've been trying to get through this thing. It's I keep thinking I'm almost done with it, and then I come up with more topics that I know need to be included in it, and it just keeps getting more expansive. But quiet BPD at the very core is very similar to the extroverted BPD, so I'd say any of them would work very nicely. I'm not a big fan of the workbooks. 7 major car accidents. Back's killing me, man. I'm not a big fan of the workbooks out there. I've tried all the workbooks. I've done all the workbooks. I've read all the books. And the only two that I'm really impressed with that exist, which is one of the reasons I'm writing a book. Because if there was one existed that impressed me, then I wouldn't write one. Thanks, Joe. But I like Stop Walking on Eggshells. And that's a scary one for us to see our partners reading because we think that means they're going to leave us when they stop, or that we're not going to get what we want or need, right? But that's not the case. The book is actually intended to improve a significant amount of your life just as much as theirs, just to get some better understanding going on, right? So I would encourage you and your partner, if you have one, check that book out. But if you have the quiet BPD side, I think pick up I Hate You, Don't Leave Me first. That would be my opinion on that. So that said, let's see. Little coffee break. Sometimes running my mouth nonstop really dries it out, Zanny says, is there a link between dreams? He has nightmares, sweats, and blames me for what I did in a dream. Well, the blaming you for what happened in the dream is because dreams have the ability to produce emotions. We wake up and our brain is trying to remember what just happened in the dream, of which can generate the same emotions as if the event was happening. And this is because the amygdala does not know the difference between the past, present, or future. When you're looking at a dream, your brain's analyzing it almost like it's a past event that happened because it was. You just dreamt it and it's in the past. And then we look at it from the simulated future perspective. And if you're present enough in that process, it'll paint the picture as if you really are a cheater. You cheated on me in my dream. I wake up, I'm going to feel nervous about it. You know what I mean? But why am I dreaming about that? To answer the question about the link. Why am I dreaming about that? I think dream interpretation is very useful. I used to think it was total bullshit. I really did. I hear somebody say, oh, what does this dream mean? You lost a tooth. And I'm like, God, you crazy people. Like, you lose a tooth in a dream. And then I lost a tooth in a dream. And I'm like, what the hell? I look up and I'm like, yeah, I am dealing with that in my life. Turns out that the dream interpretation thing is very useful. It's a part of what they call shadow work, of which, again, when I first heard about shadow work, I'm like, this sounds ridiculous. You know what I mean? It's really not. Understanding the subconscious mind, which is active when you're sleeping. The brain reverts to using like 33% of its normal power or something like that, only activating the most important regions of the brain. And you only dream about the most important things, of which a lot of the times are on your mind all the time. So they can be very revealing, because sometimes you don't even realize some things are on your mind. But his link to it being realistic is obviously, you don't have to worry too much about that. That's what's happening, the amygdala thing. But you can get a lot of useful information out of stuff like dreams. I would say it is worth looking at, for sure. Rhonda says, can people that have endured abuse mimic signs of someone with BPD? Yes, there's something called a trauma bond, which will often create totally different behavioral sets in someone, and it doesn't even have to involve BPD whatsoever. You can experience that as a neurotypical person with another neurotypical person. But with someone who has BPD, the properties can be transiently. They can float right out of me into whoever I'm with. That is the truth. You can adopt them. You can learn them. And you can just learn some of the coping mechanisms sometimes. Not all of it. You don't end up developing BPD in most cases, although I've seen that happen too. You could develop it at any point in your life. If you are committed enough and with someone long enough, you will start to adopt some of their personality traits, and this is a personality disorder. But that whole transferring type of thing that's going on there, that is a very, very common thing, especially if you've been with them for quite some time. The longer you're with someone, the more like them you become, and vice versa, the more like you that they become most of the time too. BPD is a weird modifier though, because it's such a dominating kind of behavioral set. You could have two people in a relationship, and one could have something very outrageous. They could have just as severe of a condition, right? And you might not even know it for the first few years, because your BPD is taking center stage, baby. You're up there all the time, taking all the attention because it's that tough of a condition. It's like the toughest thing to beat ever. And then once you get better, all of a sudden you see that they have problems, and you're like, whoa, what the hell? They seemed totally fine before because they didn't have a chance to display any of them. And sometimes you'll leave a relationship with somebody with BPD and realize that you are now displaying some of those same properties. Good news is it's easier to break those habits than it is if you had formed them in childhood and lived with it your whole life. So that's the good news. And the better news is that you can always change your position. You can always improve. You can always develop new skills. You can always develop new perspective changes. You can always find new sources of validation. Thank you, Tika. Appreciate you. I sometimes it looks hopeless. I get that, especially if you've been dealing with this for a really long time and apathy and nihilism are starting to set in. Things are rough, when you don't care about anything in the world, including yourself, or you've been beaten down to a pulp. It can be very difficult to wrap your mind around why even try changing something. But I would pose this question, which is it really about you as much so as you thought? If you are truly capable of changing the world, making a dent in the universe, which I believe we all are, don't you have some sort of responsibility to that for everyone else who benefits? Because isn't that infinitely the ripple effects? Aren't the ripple effects infinitely more important than your day-to-day experience? I mean, the mark you leave on the world, your children, how they grow up, your children's children's children, all those people in your life who may need you, who you don't even know yet. It's really unfair to the rest of the world to not change. It's kind of a moral imperative to change. Rhonda says, I think that's where I'm at after being cheated on, cursed at, and yelled at, and some physical abuse. Well, I'm terribly sorry for what you've gone through. Nobody, just like an addict, nobody decides they want to be an addict. Nobody decides they want to be in an abusive relationship. These kinds of things just happen. Just like nobody decides they want BPD. you know? Nobody wants it. And that's strange because it is an awesome condition. You just have to understand that the negative coping mechanisms have to be chiseled away. You don't want to get rid of your ultimate core personality, which I assure you does exist. And I know everybody's been telling you that, identity crisis is a part of this. You don't know who you are. And I hated it when people said that. I hated it. I didn't want to think I didn't know who I was, because that means that I was relying on everybody else to tell me who I am, and I didn't want to think that was me. But that's what I was doing. And they were wrong. I had an identity the whole time. I had one. I just didn't know what it was. I just didn't know myself. There's a big difference between you don't know who you are and you don't have an identity. We have an identity crisis and we don't know who we are. It doesn't mean we aren't someone. You see what I mean? And that someone, as you start to figure out who that is an effing firecracker, man. You know what I mean? That person is capable of putting dents in the universe, and you are deep down. That's the part. If I had to say, everybody has frustrating points in their job. Being a BPD coach, I'm sure you can imagine all the possible frustrations, but you might be surprised to learn that almost nothing frustrates me doing what I do. One of the most frustrating things, though, if I had to name something, if I actually had to pick something, would be the fact that I know we all know that we're special. I know we all know. I know you know. Yet you're still going to sit there and tell me I'm worthless and I don't have any purpose and what's the point and I don't care and nobody loves me. I mean, some of that might feel true, You might even have some of it is true. Maybe you don't know your purpose yet. But you were meant for something. We all have a very weird fire burning in our heart. It's very different from all the other hearts. I can clearly see it, clear as day. Yet you want to hide from having to do what you need to do with that fire. And it's usually out of fear of failure. I'm afraid that what people will think of me if I can't achieve this goal. That's usually one of the things stopping you back from hitting on that fire and doing something that puts a dent in the universe. But I believe in you, and I know everybody will get there, especially if you're showing up here. I struggle with IBS. Excellent name. Excellent name. How could I explain how intense my emotions really are to my partner that does not have BPD? Okay. So let me start by saving you years and years and years of struggle in your life. Let me give you back a lot of time, as much as I can, with this one statement. You can. They will never understand what it is like to suffer from this. There it is. That is the answer. They will never understand. And the more you're trying, you're just wasting your time. They can maybe slightly better get it, right? But they're never going to actually understand what you're experiencing. And your efforts to do so will graduate in the primitive fashion that they do with BPD. We'll start by just, stonewalling them. Maybe we'll start by screaming at them. They'll start by throwing something at the wall. We'll start by making threats or insults. We'll start by, leaving or whatever, like threatening to leave, right? To avoid being abandoned ourselves. But one thing you'll notice is no matter how much pain you showcase to them, they're never gonna get it. So don't try. Don't try to get them to get it. And that's not why they're there anyway, to just understand your pain. And you don't want them to understand the pain if you're really honest with yourself and you stop to think about how backwards that is. The reason that you're doing this, let me tell you to you this way. Thank you, Kelsey. The reason that I was trying so hard to show everybody how much pain I was in, the reason I destroyed my whole house that night, $30,000 in furniture damage, $10,000 in structural damage to the house. Then I went outside and rammed one of my cars into my other car. That wasn't bad enough. I actually thought that they could help me. I thought, because you have to ask yourself, why? Why do you want them to understand the emotions? I mean, you could tell them that when you see a warning sign, that means we need space. But that's often not what we want in the moment. In the moment, we want them to understand it, so we don't feel alone. But they can't get it, and you think they can help you. They can't help you like that. They can't help you. They could be there for you. They could listen to you. They could, they can't enable you. Otherwise, you're just stuck in the same loop they are, and nobody's happy, right? That's the recipe for it ending, for it not working out, the exact opposite of what we want. You have to figure out how to fight your demons by yourself. You have to do it yourself. They can't do that for you. They can cheer you on. They can be there when you fall down. But the only way that they will understand the pain and the suffering is if they had it and experienced it themselves. That's one of the reasons that I do what I do, because there was no one there the entire journey for me who understood me at all. Not a single person. I had the support of many people. I had the forgiveness of many people. I still was alone. So part of what I do now includes 24/7 tech support, because I recognize that camaraderie is one of the ingredients that massively propels us forward. Gets us through a lot faster. It's critical, man. Gotta have it. If you want to move fastest, that is, anyway. Tina said, my father was like that with damage. Yeah, I'm sorry. The thing, there's a reason that this is often referred to as a generational curse. You know what I mean? A lot of this is generational. A lot of what you deal with in life is generational. And I heard something in a movie. I forget which movie or show it was, but someone had said, yeah, we're all just cheap knockoffs of our father. And I thought about that. And I disagree very much. I think that you adopt things from your parents, but I don't think that's the goal at all, is to be as like them as possible. I mean, we're all into the evolution, right? We're all into the evolution. Everything around you is evolving, or it should be. The surviving things evolve. I think we're meant to become a better version of our parents. I think that's the take home. Extract the lessons. See, look at what happened. Extract the lessons from your parents. But the goal should be to pave your own path, to be your own person, to have your own future, right? What you see as a happy ending. You can't live for other people. That goes for your parents. It goes for your partner. It goes for anyone. You have to live for yourself. It's imperative. And I know it's tough. I know it is, but I believe in everybody here. I know everybody can do it. I know this because I literally had the worst case I've ever seen. I mean, it was atrocious, and that makes a lot of sense doing what I do now. If you suffered as bad as I did, it makes sense that when you got out, you would say, all right, I need to help everybody else. It just does. It's, I went down in the hole, and I slayed Grendel. You know what I mean? And what does he do? He comes back up with the head, and he shows the villagers, you can do it. Look at it. Done. So now it's time for each one of you to dive into that pit like Beowulf, And I feel super nerdy right now. Feeling super nerdy. Anyway, I like the Beowulf story. It's very allegorical when it comes to the BPD world, because our monsters are, just like Grendel, this monster that wakes up periodically and comes up out of this deep dark pit filled with water, lives in a cave at the bottom, eats some of the neighborhood, right? The villagers, periodically every 10 years or whatever it may be, kind of like our life. We're all trying to struggle to get by, and every here and there, we lose a few people, don't we? You have to go down into that pit. You got to hold your breath, dive in, super scary, super unknown, super dark, terrifying. And you have to slay whatever monsters are down there. It's the only way out. It's the only way that you'll ever improve, the only way you'll ever be better. It's the answer to the life that you want. That's the truth. And it starts with the micro actions. If it looks so overwhelming, what I want you to do is take a look at your immediate situation, your immediate family, your own backyard, and say, what little things can I do that would make this person's life better? And start there. If you don't know what to do, pick up the phone and call that friend you haven't talked to in a while that you know is hurting. You know you can help people. And it doesn't have to be some, ridiculous superhero moment where you swoop in with a cape. I mean, it could be as simple as helping your neighbor with their groceries. But you need to start doing things that make the world a better place, because that's the answer. That said, guys, we are at the end of our show. We go live Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. US EST on TikTok, and all of the episodes end up posted on YouTube. So if you miss one, you could probably catch it there fairly soon. I think there's something like 50 up already there, so there's lots of information. If you don't know what to do and you feel lost, you're not alone in this process. Show up every morning and check out whatever topic we're going over, and don't forget to email me if you need some personalized guidance. I'm here for all of you. Thanks for showing up and making your life better and the lives of the people around you better. Have a great Wednesday. Tomorrow I'll be back bright and early, 7 a.m.